wonderful opportunity to connect with Sister Réjane. It's Nun Sense for a Tuesday on this feast day of St. Teresa of Avila. Good morning, Sister.
Good morning, Sister Réjane.
Good morning. How are you both?
Doing great. How are you this morning?
All right. Well, I'm a little tired. I woke up at 3 with inspiration for Sister Mary Carlo's wake reflection.
Mm.
You gotta get it when you get there, when
Amen.
you have that inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm awake. I'm awake.
You sound awake.
Yep. So yes, but happy feast of Teresa of Avila.
Yes.
Yes, she's one of my favorite saints. She's one of 4 doctors of the church that are women, and I always say this takes me back to teaching 5th grade that saints are rock stars, right? And my point, I would do this big bulletin board at the beginning of the year and put all these saints up there, and they'd walk in and they'd just kind of scratch their heads. But my point was okay, you're fans of famous musicians and sports players. But from a spiritual perspective, saints are that kind of famous for our
Amen
church.
to that.
And so, yeah. And I mean, it's when you think about it, like rock, the analogy being like they're grounded, and star, the inspiration and the light for us, that connect with that personal relationship with God. So that's why I always say rock stars.
Yeah.
So I have to share a quote about Teresa. And then one of my favorite, a good story that I like about her. And this comes from her way of perfection. She says, those who truly love God, love every good, desire every good, and praise every good. And they always join favor and defend good people. They have no love for anything but truth and whatever is worthy of love. Do you think it's possible for those who really love God to love vanities? No, indeed, they cannot. No, nor can they love riches or worldly things or delights or honor or strife or envy. All this is so because they seek only to please their beloved. So I just think that's kind of, sends that message, it's God alone, and beautiful. So now I have to share the story, and I have to put this out there. If there's anything like a soap opera in the convent, this would be it. Okay. So she entered in her 20s in the Carmelite monastery in her hometown of Avila. The monastery was called Incarnation. So she was there for 25 years until her 40s, but she afterwards always said she wasn't a very devout nun. And I think some of that had to do with the circumstances in that monastery. Okay, so if you had money or a dowry, you brought it with you, right? But you were also allowed to bring your servants, live a comfortable life, have family, friends, and male visitors. And you could come and go for a couple months at a time to visit your family and benefactors. So that, kind of right there, you're like, oh gosh, but this was back in, the 1500s. But if you didn't have money, you lived a very different, simple life. So life in the convent then wasn't very equal. So Teresa wanted to reform it. She thought, let's let the nuns should be on equal footing regardless of money and should really live that simpler lifestyle devoted to God. But it turns out at Incarnation, they didn't want to reform. They liked what they had. So she had to leave, and she ended up founding new monasteries with a different rule, and they were called the Discalced Carmelites, which means like barefooted, but it's basically getting to that simpler life. Okay, so she actually founded one in the same city of Avila called St. Joseph of Avila. But needless to say, she left on bad terms in an Incarnation and a lot of hurt feelings. So fast forward 10 years, and the powers that be request she go back to an Incarnation because it was sorely in need of some good financial and spiritual leadership, and they knew Teresa could do it. But they said, you will be prioress for only 3 years, get it straightened out, and then you can leave. And don't change their rule. Like, that's not your point.
Wow.
So, but I don't think the nuns got that message, because when Teresa arrives, they are screaming and yelling and barricading the door. And so, the priests that are with her have to, break in, put her, and they officially install her as prioress, right? like, boom. And she's like, I'm not here to change anything. But there's still a group that don't believe her, right? So the next morning is chapter. That's like the meeting where you settle things out. And so this is the brilliant move. So she's on her own. When she enters the chapel, which and it'd be like choral style, so like they have different assigned seats. She doesn't take the prior seat. She goes and sits in a regular seat. But earlier in the morning, she had placed in the prior seat a statue of Our Lady of Mercy. And the keys to the convent are hanging off her hand. I think this is brilliant. Okay, so once everyone's arrived in chapel, she walks over to stand under the statue of Our Lady of Mercy, and she begins, "My mothers and sisters, obedience sent me to this house to serve you as well as I can, and beyond that, to learn and be taught by you. But as you can clearly see," and she points to Our Lady's statue, "she's your real prioress, and she is the one who will govern." And then she's like, "I'm just simply here to reorganize convent life in a way that is good for you, and I am not here to reform it to the discalced rule." That just totally broke that tension and hostility. And I just think that's genius and very creative. And I just think it had to do with her deep prayer life based in humility that like inspired her to do this. So I think my prayer today is that we can be open to God's creativity in our lives. Wow. Anyway, that's my cool story.
That is a very cool story. What an amazing woman. Wow.
Yeah, and I love it. I mean, we're talking about St. Teresa of Avila, not just one among 4 women who are doctors of the church, the first to be proclaimed so, and her reforms continue to today. So her imprint on the church has been lasting. As has your imprint on our listening audience, Sister Réjane. You're always fabulous. Thank you very much. Even though you say you didn't get much sleep, you sound very energetic this morning, so thank you.
Oh, well, that's great. I got to do 2 in a row. I love it. Thank you both.
Thank you, sister.